And I asked a question this week, as I always do at the group. Where does self-sabotage show up in your life? And I love the answers I get from people. Thank you for being open and honest to everybody who answered that question. But let me give you some examples here. Trudy said all the time: work, exercise, eating healthily. So I'm sure people can relate to that one. Julie said, when I need it least, which is always true, isn't it? You know, when we're under real pressure, we really want something to work, we find a way to sabotage it in some way. So we'll talk about that. Melinda said, really interesting. Is that a trick question? She says, how does one know? Which is interesting, actually, because a lot of the time we sabotage ourselves without even realizing it, don't we? And I think the first step really is becoming aware of when we're doing it and how we're doing it. But she also went on to talk about relationships, which I thought was really interesting as well. Because she talked about, she finds guys of good character boring, but people say they are healthy. Because mostly, I think a lot of the time is the guys she was attracted to are the ones that weren't necessarily good for her or treated her badly, which is a really interesting way of it showing up. Sandra as well said, when I'm fearful or apprehensive or trying to move forward. So, effectively, it can take many forms, self-sabotage. And I speak to many people. It shows up a lot in relationships, I know. For me, it has shown up for me in relationships in the past. One very good example is with my wife now. I've been with for 11 years. And because I'd had my heart broken in the past, when I started to feel close to somebody in early stages of a relationship, I would unconsciously sabotage the relationship because I was afraid of getting hurt. So I would basically just back off. And as soon as I felt myself falling for someone, I would back off completely, not respond to any text or calls or anything. And the other person would be like, what's going on here? They didn't understand. But luckily, my wife now pursued it because I was doing my usual thing of kind of like the lever pattern, basically trying to back off from the relationship. But she pursued it. And, 11 years later, we're happily married. But that was all because there was some trauma in my system that had been unprocessed and then was kind of sabotaging my future relationships. In more recent times, it's shown up more in business and in my own entrepreneurial journey, having these times when the business isn't going as well as I'd like, and then having these kind of thoughts come up of just wanting to quit, basically. But as somebody else said there, some very good examples. Exercise, perhaps it's you built a healthy eating routine, an exercise routine, and a few months down the line, you find that you're not going anymore, or you've reached for the fast food or the desserts or whatever it might be. So it can show up in any aspect of our lives. But we can go into today why it is that we do this. Why do we self-sabotage ourselves on the path? And ultimately what we can do about it. But how about your own journey with this, Kirsi? I'm sure anyone listening to this can have their own examples of this. I'd love to hear them if anyone wants to share in the chat. But how has your own journey been around this subject of self-sabotage, and how's it shown up for you in the past?
It's like a friend you live with, because like everybody's saying, you can see it in every area of your life. And I love that we're talking about this. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's good to be here with you as always. But yeah, I think the key factor here is the awareness. The more we talk about it, the more aware we become of these traits within ourselves that we sabotage ourselves with. And, like you said, it is stuck energy that is within us that we have learned to live with. So it has become familiar. And whatever is familiar, it feels safe. So we retrieve back to that. It's like the cave theory, you stay in the cave because it feels so safe. And even though there's freedom outside, there's food outside, there's all the expansion of the dreams and life that, you want to explore. So it's almost like a chemical dependency, that you just retrieve back to, it's an automatic response. But when we talk about it, we become more aware of it. So I've seen it in every area of my life. And, you know, let's say the most recent one, expansion into social media.
Yes.
So just 2 years ago, no, I did not want to be in social media in any kind of shape or form. I did not feel safe. And then little by little, starting to take steps into challenging myself. And, you know, it really became clear to me that this is a way to my goals, a way to my dreams, a way to leaving a legacy, you know, behind me. I'm getting older. So, you know, it's like you come to that point, like now or never. I came to that point. Now or never. You know, I couldn't put up with that anymore. So when I have a dream within me, to start taking those actions became crucial. And I realized that if I don't take those actions, I keep self-sabotaging myself. I keep retrieving back to that safe nest, back to those excuses, you know. And one of the biggest excuses for me was that, well, I still have time. I don't have to do it right now. I'm okay. I'm just chilling. I'm just, you know, I'm content. But then, you know, I came to the point where I don't have time anymore.
Yes.
It's now or never, you know. And so thirsting myself into that action, you know, instead of self-sabotaging. And, you know, action is the key, because we can have the dreams, but if we don't come to that second step of actually taking action. And, you know, I just made a post about it. There's a step in between where you start seeing yourself as a different person, because we are a one person with that self-sabotage, with those old patterns, with the stuck energy. We're one person with that. And then we have a goal. But when we really come to that realization that, who do I want to become? Who am I going to become without these traits of self-sabotage? What is it like when I actually am that different person? How does it feel like? And this is how we get into the meditations and, you know, spending time with your inner world and crafting that and creating that. So I don't know if I answered your question, Mark.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's for anyone who's on this path of becoming an entrepreneur, and I think it's quite a common path for people on the journey of awakening at some point to go, okay, I want to explore my purpose or my mission and create something around that. I want to help others in some way. And that leads you down the path to becoming an entrepreneur of some kind. Maybe you're a teacher or a healer or a coach, or you create a product or any kind of service, but you go, okay, I've been on this huge inner journey myself. I now want to help the world in some way. So it leads you on a journey of kind of entrepreneurship, which I think happens for a lot of people on the awakening path at different points. So it's all relevant. The amazing thing about the entrepreneur's path is it brings up a lot of stuff. It brings up all of these patterns. It brings up all this lack of self-belief and doubt. And but that's the kind of gold in the journey, really. It's the healing work that you get to do on yourself on the way. So initially, when you start creating a business, there'll be a lot of excitement and a lot of you feel very driven and passionate about the path, and things can kind of go quite well. And then when there's a drop off, it's always going to happen, and things don't go according to plan. Then all this stuff comes to the surface, all this self-doubt and this imposter syndrome and whatever you want to call it. And that's when I think a lot of people just kind of go, throw in the towel, and it's not for me. I'm not good at this, or there's no market for this, or whatever it is, and just kind of like pack it in. These patterns have come to the surface, and you just go, essentially what's happening is there's a big energy there of discomfort and pain and suffering that comes with it, and it's just like energetically we just turn away and we go, no, I'm not ready to face that, or I don't want to face that. But that is when you realize you've been at this for a while and you realize that is the gold in the journey. This stuff comes up to the surface, the really uncomfortable, painful stuff, and instead of backing off and going, no, I don't want to look at that, you lead into it and you feel into it. And now who knows how long you might have to feel through this stuff, because a lot of these traumas have been compacted from childhood, these kind of really painful stuff we haven't processed, we haven't looked at, we haven't felt into. And so it's just build up and up and up and up. And then we go on this journey of like just trying to uncover our true power. And it means facing this stuff that has been suppressed from the past. But, if you try and do it on your own, like most people do, I think, at some point that stuff's going to become too overwhelming and you just go, okay, I'm going to go back. Like you said, I'm going to go back to the cave, I'm going to go back to this kind of full-time job. Okay, it's not fulfilling, I don't enjoy it, but you know what? It's better than facing all that horrible stuff. But what I've found is that you've got to accept that it's inevitable, it's going to happen. If you want to create something like that, create something with like a new relationship, a new exercise routine, you want to create a new diet, like I said, new relationship, a business, you're going to have to face this stuff, but the key really is knowing how to face it. Like, first of all, as you said, you've got to become aware of the sabotaging patterns. That means you've got to become aware of your thought process, when it starts to take you down a self-sabotage route. And then you've got to be able to face it. Now, that doesn't mean you're kind of, trying to reframe thoughts or trying to think positively, because that's not going to work really when it comes to these really deep traumas, which is the whole mindset world, isn't it? Well, I'm going to reframe stuff and I'm going to try and think positively, or I'm going to come up with some kind of visualization that's going to bypass this uncomfortable sensation. Classic bypassing. The key really is you've got to face it, you've got to feel it, and that's very tough to do on your own, as I discovered. From trying to create a business, sitting with these really uncomfortable sensations, and it's hard enough to do it with support, but it's impossible to do it on your own. So you've really got to have support, someone to hold space with you as you go into this really, really difficult stuff. Because it's not just like you feel into it for a day, oh, it's gone. You're talking about weeks, it could be years, it could be decades of feeling through this really, really uncomfortable stuff. But that said, that's the gold in the journey, because as you clear it, it's like it's leading you towards your core self, your true self, your higher nature. You're aligning with your true self. That is the real gold in the journey, is it brings this stuff to the surface so you can go in, feel it and clear it, and it takes you closer towards self-realization or higher self, or whatever you want to call it. But don't do it on your own, is what I would say, because at some point you're going to get stuck and you won't be able to go through it.
Yeah, I think what comes to my mind when you were talking about that is maybe important to really kind of voice out, that these places of assessment, I call them self-assessment. When we really become truthful and honest with ourselves, like you said, that can be very heavy energy, that it feels like you're actually dying. It feels like you're somewhere so deep in darkness that you will never get out of there without that support. And that's why that support is so important. That's why people don't go into these places, because I would adventure to say that it's impossible to go there by yourself.
I think so.
It's impossible. You do not have that safety to experience that trauma, those blocked energies. No matter how much you can tell in your mind, it's just some blocked energies, it's in the past, because it becomes real. It's almost like if you've ever taken a drug and it's a bad trip, and you feel like you can't get out of it. It's like that.
Yeah.
Almost. You get almost like you get stuck in there. But when you have support, you can lean into that support, and your system will know that. Your whole person knows that this is different because there is this other person. You can hear their voice, you can lean into that trust that they know they have for you, and that faith, and they know how to guide you through that. So yeah, we can talk about like different levels of self-sabotage, because there are different levels, but really in the depth, when we free ourselves, when we emancipate ourselves on those deeper levels of traumas, we do need support.
Yeah.
It is impossible, in my opinion, to do it without support. And then if we don't do it with support, we will always kind of stay on that surface level. We'll come to that expansion, then we retrieve back. Then we come to the expansion, and we always know that I am not living my full potential. I'm not even on the path of that full potential. We know it. And, this is the thing about the imposter syndrome. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it's a huge thing in this process of, people are so much coming out now to social media and understanding the potential that it offers us, which is huge. But at the same time, there's a huge amount of energy for us to hold. And if we do not hold that energy within ourselves on these deeper levels, if I have not come to this place of expansion within myself, I will become an imposter trying to, perceive myself and to others that I'm here, I'm doing this, and
Yeah.
and so it becomes this superficial thing on one level or another if we don't go into the depth to emancipate ourselves and then match that energy. Because nowadays, you come online, you can have 300 people viewing you, even thousands of people viewing you, your posts, your lives. I mean, where is that happening? You don't just go on a stage in your local town, perform or talk in front of 300 people just out of your bedroom. You have to train yourself. You have to come to that place energetically and grow into it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. It's I mean, it's a great what I was saying is, like, the world we live in is amazing, really. Talked about this a couple of weeks ago with a guy called Tommy, who's an entrepreneur. I had him on one of his lives, and it's so different now. If we talk about the entrepreneur's journey, you don't have to build a physical business out of bricks and mortar anymore. You've got this amazing thing called social media. You've got these amazing things called mobile phones, and if you've got that, essentially you can create something for yourself, which is incredible. A way of earning, a way of giving to the world and receiving energy back in the form of money. It's an incredible feeling, when you have something like that and it's working, and it's working well. It's so empowering, like you say. But there's a tremendous amount of work involved in it. It's not just the learning how to market or create an online business or whatever it might be, how to talk on, like in this situation, online in front of people, which is always a huge challenge for me in the past, something I've had to work very hard on. But I say 89% of the work is on myself, is on all the stuff that comes up on a daily basis. It's fine when the clients are rolling in and the money's rolling in, and it feels so empowering and amazing, and you're on your purpose and on your mission, and everything's great. But like everything in life, it goes through cycles. That's why energy is waves. So it goes up and down. And so there are going to be times where all of a sudden the opposite happens, and the clients aren't coming in, the money's not coming in, and then what happens? It's like I said, it's that's when all the stuff comes up, and you find out that's when you've, like you said, it's if you haven't done that level of work on yourself, then as soon as you hit that, like you go into a pattern. Talked about personality patterns in the past, but there's generally ways we can respond to overwhelming energy that we pick up when we're children, which is my pattern was always like the lever pattern, which is like, get the hell out of there. Something incredibly intense energy hit my system in childhood, and my pattern was to move away from it energetically, to go, to go out. But of course, there's at least 5, aren't there? I think there's more like 7, but there's the aggressive pattern. I see that in my daughter, where she literally just pushed the energy back in an aggressive way, which is more of a fire system. There's the endurer, which just kind of pushes down into the earth. There's the rigid pattern as well, which goes up to the head, which is more of a kind of like people who are all about systems and process and performance. But there's the merger pattern as well, which is kind of like to kind of push your energy onto another and to share it in a certain way, more like a water system. But we all have these patterns that don't really have a say in. They're kind of just something that we learned to do as children, and as a way of dealing with really uncomfortable energy. And there's nothing wrong with that, because as children, if we didn't find a way to respond to that energy, then it would completely overwhelm us, and it could even kill us, because we aren't able to hold it when we're young. But these patterns that we develop as children then get stronger and stronger and more embedded as we go through life. As I said at the start, I developed that lever pattern, and then what do I do in relationship when it gets too overwhelming? I leave it. I get out of there and I sabotage it. There's people there talking about one lady talking about the pattern of continually going into the same relationship that is with the wrong person, like a person that treats you badly. Why is that? Mm-hmm. I mean, you can kind of go in and try and work that all out, but that's an energetic pattern that you've learnt from childhood. Maybe it's kind of an impression, an imprint from your parents in some way, and so that for you is what love is. That it's like someone who is not interested or not there for you or not connected, and that is what you're kind of chasing. But until you heal that pattern, until you heal the underlying trauma, then you will keep repeating and repeating and repeating. And a lot of the time we do it subconsciously, but it's only when we then go in and go, okay, enough of this. This is where I have to meet people. A lot of my clients is like, okay, I've been doing this for decades and decades and decades, the same result over and over again, except it gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And I'm just having a breakdown, and I don't know what I'm doing in life. And then it's like, okay, I can't do that anymore. I have to do something different. And that is it's actually a wonderful point to get to, because then there is no option apart from to go inward and start to heal ourselves, which is the whole point of the human experience, I think, because when you start to go inwards and you start to heal yourself, you start to evolve and you start to realize who you really are. So in a sense, it's like the patterns, we can have gratitude for the patterns because ultimately they lead us to our true self, which is why we're really here, and so eventually we can look back and have gratitude. But while we're in the midst of it, and whilst we're living out these patterns, it's incredibly painful. There's a lot of suffering. What do you think about that, Kirsi, when it comes to the patterns?
Yeah. So I think, just what I mentioned before, the assessment, the truthful assessment, the awareness, the truthful assessment of what is there, and understanding that none of us are alone, in these patterns. But I so agree with you. Like, we just keep repeating the pattern till we come to that point of awareness and that truthfulness. And we get better at these patterns, till the desire to become free, to be our authentic self becomes bigger than that repetition, that seeking for that false safety, which keeps us going and going back to the same place. And so we have the assessment, we have the truthfulness, we have the gratitude. Like you said, I think it's beautiful what you said about the patterns, how they reveal the light to us in their own strange way, because by them we see the contrast, we keep seeing the darkness that keeps coming back, the shadows that keep falling. So in it's an innate within us to reach out for the light. So even the cave
Yes.
theory, we come to the opening of the cave, we see the light, and then we go back. So when we become to understand that these are actually a part of human experience, and these have messages for me, these patterns. And once I start learning myself and become curious about myself and seeing the pattern repeating, I had this interesting pattern. I noticed every Friday I had like an emotional breakdown. Every Friday, something happened in my relationships or in my circumstances that caused me to have like this nervous breakdown, minor nervous breakdown. And I started paying attention. I was like, every Friday, you know, first I just thought it was them, it was the circumstances. But then I'm like, okay, every Friday, this must not be just the circumstances. And, this was before I even came to the coaching and being coached and all of that. But once I started understanding, hey, actually, I'm accountable for my experiences. So that's another thing. So we have awareness, we have assessment, we have understanding that these are messages to us. We start having gratitude, we start having accountability to understand that, hey, it is not the circumstances, it is something within myself.
Yes. Responsibility. Yeah.
Right. Responsibility and the curiosity of, okay, what is it? What is it then? And it's almost like you go with the flashlight and you start like, what is in here? I'm starting to
Yeah.
get curious. Like, maybe it's not just that I'm a victim,
Yeah.
because we start thinking that we're a victim, and then we get into this energy deeper into the darkness and the stuck energies and blaming and shaming and all of that stuff. But we get curious that, okay, maybe I'm not a victim. Maybe I actually have a choice here. Maybe I even have some power here. And you, through that gratitude and through that understanding, start getting curious about what is going on. And that's when that journey really begins of becoming courageous and going into those shadow places and getting that support once you are ready to go deeper in it. I mean, I did it for years without support, just gaining understanding and, through books and, people who had gone before me and, mentors online and stuff like that. But then I became to that point where I was going around the same mountain by myself, and because I just couldn't go to those deeper layers.
It's there's quite a lot you said there, which I thought was great. That word responsibility is huge. Especially if we tie it back to the entrepreneur's journey, which we talked about, it's like responsibility, and that's really helped me on my own journey. It's like there's a tendency where to get into a kind of victim mindset, isn't there? Blaming. You can hear when it comes to relationships, some women might say, for example, all men are dogs or whatever, or someone who has another pattern, a guy might say, all women are gold diggers, or because there's kind of that victim mindset of they're seeing a pattern repeated over and over again, and then it's like, well, the problem must be external, like it's not me, it's not my issue. It's like, or in a business, it's like, well, for example, nobody's nobody's got any money, or nobody is ready for this kind of work. It's somebody else's problem. But if we realize that, like you said, the external world is basically just like a projection or a hologram that just reflects your energetic system back to you. So it's just showing you if there's an issue in the external world, it's showing you, like pointing at an internal trauma that is ready to be healed. Like if you're noticing a block in your life, I mean, I put out in the group this week, I have a training about getting stuck on your awakening journey and getting unstuck. And it's one of the most popular ones. Whenever I put it out there, it's one of the most popular ones, because everyone has this feeling now and again of just feeling stuck. Like, oh, I can't move forward. I want to move forward, but I just feel stuck. And, wherever that shows up in life, it's essentially the same thing. It's kind of repeating pattern, the same energy. It's showing you, reflecting back to you an internal trauma. And that's a key part of responsibility. It's going, no, I'm not a victim here. I am responsible for my own life experience. And so the answers are all inside. Like if you're having a problem with, in a relationship, like it's pointing at an internal trauma. If you're having a feeling stuck in your business or your work, it's pointing an internal trauma. But there's incredible power in that, because if you are able to heal that trauma with support, surrender, like we talk about every week, then you'll see the external situation start to resolve itself. Like your relationships will begin to improve, your finances, your business, or your health will improve as you work on yourself. So you don't actually have to go out into the external world and like change much. There obviously is some work involved in setting up a business or finding another person for a relationship, for example. But what you'll find is that different people start showing up in your life because you're not, that trauma has been resolved. So you're not attracting that same vibration. Instead of attracting guys, for example, that treat you badly, you'll find as you heal yourself that all of a sudden there's guys that show up that want to treat you well. And because you've healed yourself and you love yourself, you'll be open to somebody who loves you, and the same in every aspect of life. Suddenly you want to treat yourself better. You want to look after you. It's not you don't have to force yourself to go to the gym or to force yourself to eat healthily. You just want to do it, and the same with business and money. You'll find that there's still challenges. Like I said, there are still waves of high and low vibration, but you'll find that my experience is I know how to be with it now. Like when times are good and the business is going well, it's like, okay, I don't attach to it and say, I know that it's going to change. Like the same, if I go for a down period where things aren't going so well, I know how to be with that energy, and I trust that I'll come out of it again. So I'm not kind of, even though the mind is like, oh, it's not working, it's not going well, I should give up. It's like, okay, I'm just going to sit with that. I'm going to sit with those parts, feel into them, and do the work. That's when the best work can be done, really. And just trust that if I do that, I don't have to change anything externally. Things will change. Everything, the only constant in life is change, isn't it? So there will be an upturn at some point. But if you haven't developed that capacity to be with what is, then that's when you get stuck, because you are kind of fighting your experience. But if you know how to just generally be with your experience, feel into the energy, get support as you're doing so, then you can move through any situation, really. It might take some time, even with support, but you can move through it. You only get really stuck when you're unable to be with your internal experience.
Yes. It's really kind of like all about perception. There's this saying in the Bible that I keep repeating it to myself over. I always come back to that. Beyond all things, seek understanding. So when you understand, you come to the understanding, your perception changes. So when your perception changes from being fearful about these experiences and fearful about that darkness and the shadow, and you feel stuck in that perception, now you come to a perception of, oh, well, maybe there's a gift for me over here. Maybe there's something good in this. Oh, there's a whole nother understanding. There's a whole nother set of people, a tribe of people who are actually thriving on these experiences.
Yeah.
That is so empowering. And that is why it's so beautiful to think collectively. to be, to listen to people, even if you're not. I think what you just said over there, it just is so powerful, and it's hard to realize before you come to that point that this inner journey and all of this that we're talking about causes such a ripple effect on the outside that it just literally automatically, we are so used to trying to change relationships, trying to go after that person.
Work at it.
Why you don't do things like this? Why don't you do it like this? Don't do it like that. And trying to fix those relationships on the outside, which gets us nowhere. It just gets us deeper into the rut. But when you do the inner work, it's like magic, and it's so hard probably for somebody to understand who hasn't experienced it, because it's so effortless. All of a sudden your relationships just start expansion. The expansion comes in there, the gratitude, the kindness, people start acknowledging you the way you are, and you start seeing them the way they are, the acceptance. And one part that we haven't really mentioned here yet is the forgiveness, self-forgiveness, because when we come on this journey and we assess and we understand now and we have a new perception, we can start having regret, like how much time did I lose in this desert, just going around this same mountain, and why did I ruin that relationship? However,
I had so many regrets when I first started this journey. I was like, what? I couldn't believe the person that I had been. Couldn't believe it. And there was a big period of just like guilt and shame for the person I'd been. But it's really important to realize that to not judge our past self based on our new level of awareness, because that's not fair, really, because we just did the best we could with our previous level of awareness. And so to go now and go, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Because you didn't know any better, because you weren't awake. Essentially, you were going through a life of sleep. So I went through a big period of that, judging myself terribly for the actions I'd done in the past. But ultimately, you can come to love your past self when you realize that I just did my best and I made massive mistakes. But that was my level of awareness at the time, and I was pretty much asleep. So there's nothing no better I could have done. It's impossible for me to do any better than I did, even though I did so many silly things.
Yes. And I find myself coming back to that time and time again. Like there's still layers of unforgiveness within myself, and maybe that's why Bible says, forgive 70 times a day, like don't stop forgiving. But the forgiveness starts within ourselves. It's the hardest thing is to forgive yourself. However, when we see this as a human journey, and so the humility that comes with all of that is just incredible, and it is really all of that we're talking about is the death of the ego. So we start landing from here, from the ego to that space of a heart that we have protected so much from our childhood, from those first experiences. But that's the beauty of this journey. We keep opening up, like that lotus flower, and we don't stop that opening. I believe it's a continuous journey. However, I think it's beautiful, these things that we have talked about. It's when you just kind of map it to yourself, and you understand that there's no quitting.
No end.
And you never really graduate. You just keep doing that, but you get better at doing it. It's like writing. First you just scribble a little bit, it makes no sense to yourself or to anybody else, and then you start fluently you know.
Yeah.
So it's all about training ourselves.
Yes.
And then we get to enjoy life in it all.
Yeah.
You know,
to be with life and then not suffer, which is the thing. Like, you're always going to experience pain in life. That's just this dimension of contrast. That's the way it is, isn't it? Pain and pleasure and good and evil, and there's always contrast. But the art really is to be able to be with life and not struggle against the current and sort of reaching for the banks of the river, if you like. Just be able to go with life. Okay, it's scary. I'm going to be with fear, or whatever's there for you. It's just like sadness or depression or grief, or whatever. Okay, I'm not going to judge this. I'm not going to hide from it. I'm going to face it and feel into it. It's the turning away that creates the trauma and creates the suffering. But when you say yes to awakening, it's like you say yes to going through all of these decades of suppressed traumas and low vibration energy that you have turned away from in the past. So it doesn't, it's not an easy, anyone listening to this, I'm sure will be able to validate this, but it's an incredibly challenging journey. And I was kind of thrust into it. I had no choice. I didn't say, yes, I want to start awakening. It was like massive trauma, time to awaken. And, I had to kind of do my best. But, once you find a community that can hold you as you go through this stuff, it makes it so much easier, because you can get that resource. You can get reflection on what you're missing or what you're experiencing, and you can get that support as you go through it, which is essential. That's how we're made to be as human beings. So I think it's a big part of our journey now as we evolve as human beings, is actually starting to reconnect with each other in this way, because we've kind of lost that along the way somewhere. Yeah. Well, I know you're working today, Kirsi, so I'll let you go, but thanks so much for joining. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your own experience. Always love to have that reflection from you. And it's such a pleasure to share this journey with you, and just to be part of this community with you as we go through this journey.
Yes, thank you so much. I think I'm just sitting here and kind of savoring the space that we have created here together, and with those who are watching, and it just feels so beautiful and expansive. Thank you again for inviting me, and thank you everybody who are sharing the space with us, and I'll see you all next time.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kirsi.
Bye, Mark.
I'll wrap up here.